So you want to be a VTuber in 2025, but you don't know where to start. My name is Nico Silverado, and today I will share some of my tips on choosing what types of VTuber models you can start out with and how they can help you and your content creation. I'll do the best that I can throughout this video to answer some of the most common questions that I find newer creators have when it comes to starting out as a VTuber. Now, throughout this video, I just want to preface that I'll be doing what I can to incorporate advice and various opinions I have from both a hobbyist perspective as well as a full-time content creator perspective in regards to whether or not certain types of models are more efficient and more effective depending on what your personal goals are. If you happen to have additional questions, please consider commenting down below in this video, and I'll do what I can to answer all of your questions. Or you can join us over on our Twitch and YouTube live streams to see our models in action. Without further ado, let's dive into it and let's get learned. Now, this particular video is mainly to discuss what types of VTuber models they are and my opinions on how you personally can use them in your content creation journey. I will, of course, be making a separate video in a more in-depth fashion on how to set up your models for streams in an upcoming video. Once that's officially done, I'll have it be placed here at the very end of the video, or I'll put a little card above my head. VTubing is by far one of the most fun and creative ways to express yourself online, and it even lets you maintain your privacy while giving you endless possibilities of how you can represent yourself online, much like a video game character when you're making someone from your own imagination for the very first time. With the post-COVID era bringing about a legitimate internet renaissance, you will find that more people than ever are using the internet, and new creators are showing up every single day, and the next one could be you. Now, in VTubing, there are generally known to be three main overlapping types of models out there in the industry. We have PNG, Live 2D, or 3D. And each model type has various pros, cons, and costs. But in my opinion, they are all very valid ways to begin your VTubing journey, no matter what it is you're trying to get out of the entire content creation space. But let's dive into some of my first ever versions of VTubing that I got into as we dive into PNG Vtuber models. Blah! Congratulations, you have bared witness to my PNG model. As you can see, compared to my Live 2D model, it's a very stark difference in how you can see and how you can have things. This is a simple variation, what is known as a GIF tuber. I'm using a PNG model as a GIF and using PNGs to create a sense of animation. So this is a bit of a step above a PNG model, but in my opinion, this is still a PNG model. PNG Vtubing is by far the most affordable and common entry point in the world of VTubing. It's a very simple format that allows you as a creator to use two or more still images, or in my particular example, a GIF, to showcase a neutral and a non-talking segment. This allows you to swap in real time, showing a sense of animation without needing a large amount of assets or a hyper animated model. If you choose to find ways to get into PNG models, I would suggest looking in the realms of the internet for two versions of a character that you would like to use, or you can use various programs like what I personally use as Fugi Reactive, which is a Discord based tool that showcases when I'm talking and when I'm not talking by simply lighting up the image and GIF that I use as a really simple but very obvious way of when I am speaking. Now, when it comes to the general cost of PNG tubing, you will find that PNG tubing is entirely based on you in terms of how expensive and how complex you wish your models to be. Most PNG tubers, when they start in at the first time, can genuinely get into the platform with very free usage of drawings, whether it's from your own or fan art that you wish to find. PNG models are the best entry point for a lot of PNG and VTubers because it allows you to simply jump in with next to no cost to you. And if you wanted to get a little bit more complex, there are PNG VTubers out there with a large variety of animations, various styles of images that they use for certain emotions, and you can be almost a frame-by-frame style PNG model without having to have a fully articulated model to showcase your aliveness or your overall creativity. In regards to hobbyists, I would say a PNG model is by far the most cost-effective way to join the community without having an overall humongous investment. For those of you who are more career-focused, PNG models are great for testing the waters, but keep in mind, they're not as visually engaging for viewers. You'll need a little bit extra effort and a lot of different model expressions / images in order to kind of find a way to stand out better. PNG Vtubing is oftentimes the best method for newer creators to dive into the media without really sinking too much into the initial investment financially. Okay, I'm back. I'm alive. I'm dead. I'm alive again. But we back in action, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. But now it's time to get into my personal favorite form of VTubing, but also the model that you're seeing right now, and that is simply known as live 2D VTubing. For anyone who's watching this video, you have most likely have seen a live 2D model in some way, shape, and fashion from various idol corporations, your favorite indie creator, as this model type. Live 2D models are, in the simple way, the industry standard. They are the most common form of model, but they're also the most expressive, and they have the ability to create some of the most dynamic images, some of the most crazy shenanigans when it comes to the artistic capabilities, and with a good designer and a good rigging artist, you will stand out amongst the entirety of the crowd because, put in simple, a live 2D model has the ability to turn a flat 2D image, and it creates what is basically the best way to see as a false sense of 3D model-like characteristics while still being technically a flat image. Depending on who your artist and your rigging person is, they have the ability to turn really anything into a live and beautifully orchestrated model for you. Now, to dive right into the general cost. Overall, it's very difficult to give a general range as every artist is very different and the complexity of every model is extremely difficult to gauge. But as of right now, this recording this video in 2025, you're gonna oftentimes find the average cost is ranging around $500 to, in some higher cases, $3,000 plus. And of course, once again, this is entirely dependent on the artist and the complexity. And before I continue, I would like to make a preface about this. Usually, there is never a correlation between the cost of the model and the quality of your work. It is entirely dependent on the artist, because you will find absolute goats in the industry who will undersell themselves, and you will have absolute scammers who will charge you your entire soul for a model that has next to no personality or love into it. But when you're looking to get into this type of model style, it's important to understand that you will need both a designing individual and a rigging individual to bring your model to life. And if you're looking to commission someone and before doing this yourself, research carefully. I cannot preface this any harder than I've ever could in this video. Research when it comes to live 2D models is very important because everybody claims they can create this model type that makes you look like your favorite V-singer, idol, corporation individual. But it's important to understand that when it comes to this big of an investment, research is important. You are the one who's in charge of your money. You should always be sure you connect with verified artists and beware of bots. A personal resource that I love to use that helped me get my current model is a website simply known as vgen.com. With this model particularly being created by an amazing designer by the name of Kinnaman over on VGen and Twitter, and Amelia located over on VGen as well, who did the rigging. I'm very proud to have had this model made by the both of them. They did a great job and I love it. It makes me very fun and flowy. We love it here. But nevertheless though, try your best to find portfolios when it comes from other artists, shops, and make sure you're using verified websites to make sure that you are actually obtaining a good individual. If you do end up choosing to go to places like Twitter to find great artists, they do exist, but you risk running into more unverified individuals who do not know what they're doing, or you may even find a hidden gem who's willing to make you an affordable model for a reasonable price. Now, unlike PNG, you will need a little bit more of an equipment situation when it comes to working with a live 2D model, especially if you're trying to go for full-time streaming or if you just want to stream with a model in general. In most cases, and you're wanting to use a certain program for for this type of model type, you will need to use what's known as VTube Studio, which is available on Steam, and you will need a webcam, or in some cases, a smartphone in order to work with the basic starter level trackings. VTube Studio to mainly store and house your model and all the various assets you're going to use, and then a webcam or a smartphone in order for the initial tracking, because the model that you guys are seeing here on screen is being used simply with a webcam and my facial movements. With the power of the proper rigging, you will see that my model moves, squishes, and waves around. And depending on how you communicate with your artist, you can even incorporate hand tracking to where your VTuber's hands can move and do certain things. Again, this entirely depends on the artist and your personal investment to your model. Do you need hand tracking? Not necessarily. As you guys can see, I am able to maintain a pretty good amount of motion and flow with just my personal webcam. Because once again, when it comes to the necessity of gear, Live 2D doesn't necessarily need a top-end $5,000 PC. But in my opinion, it's a little harder to run in comparison to running a little toaster laptop. Of course, every computer is different, everyone's technical prowess is different as well. So make sure when you're testing these things out, make sure you use things like the VTube Studio base models to make sure your computer and your streams by itself can even handle the usage of a Live 2D model. It's important to make sure that your model's movements, the smoothness are prioritized on stream, as this will typically lead to better stream qualities and in some cases even better videos in the long run. For my hobbyist viewers and watchers of this particular video, I would like to say that Live 2D may be too large of an initial investment unless you're genuinely serious about using your model for more than just the aesthetic appeal of it. When you're dropping a large amount of money like this for Live 2D, it becomes a situation where having it just to have a little trophy model is of course something you can do, as it is your right, but you need to understand that this is a lot of money. It is a situation where for those of you who are trying to look into this and want to have a nice flowy model that's really cute, it may be better to invest in other types of VTubing such as PNG, mostly just because again, it sometimes may be deemed as a improper investment in your life should you choose to go down this path. Now, for those of you who are more the aspiring full-time creators, it is worth considering going into Live 2D since it is of course the most recognizable style, but again, just because you have a Live 2D model by itself does not guarantee success. Many of you will most likely be looking at this video and thinking about all these people with different types of models who have larger assets than others, other people who use more sexuality when it comes to making their models to what they believe to be their long-term success. At the end of the day, your model is just a visual asset. Your personality, your voice, and your overall content is what drives your form of success. And the real challenge in Live 2D, in my opinion, is, above all else, originality. The VTuber space is very populated, very crowded, and copying another creator's design or quote-unquote inspiring yourself from their brand, it genuinely is just a bad move. You want to do everything you possibly can to find out what can you do, what can you design to make your model stand out in a better way. You can of course obtain inspiration from other people in regards to the species type, but it depends entirely on how your artist works and how truthful you are to how unique someone is. It's important to make sure that you, as the creator of that model, that you need to make sure that your model is unique and true to how you want to be seen in the space. You can be a demon VTuber and not have to copy somebody. You can be pink, you can be a shark, you can be whatever you want. As long as your intentions are unique to you, then you have nothing to worry about. And this applies to everybody in the space. No matter your size or your format you choose to use, whether it's PNG, Live 2D, or even 3D, originality matters to everybody. When it comes to the general pros and cons of Live 2D in general, when it comes to the pros, again, it's the general customization of this format that makes it the most appealing for most people, because the customization is genuinely limitless. As long as your artist can design it, and as long as you're willing to be patient, you can be virtually anything you want, from an object, a demigod, a toaster even. It all comes down to your patience and your originality. But of course, some of the general overall cons of this is going to be generally the cost overall. Now, unfortunately for this next one, I do not have a 3D model yet.
Shush, my sweet prince. Take this.
And finally, let us talk about 3D. To start things off, the model that you guys are seeing before you is actually my 3D model that I use during my streams, which is actually based my original live 2D reference sheet that I use very often whenever I make any form of new modification for my models, emotes, and so on. And fun little quick fact, the model only needs tracking with my webcam and using a really fun program called Warudo. We'll dive into that a little bit more as we progress through this little section here. But for anyone who's looking into getting into 3D VTubing, I want you all to understand that 3D VTubing by all means is, in my opinion, the most fun and visually entertaining style of VTubing, as 3D allows you to literally have so much variety, so much power to make some of the coolest interactions and motions throughout life. And 3D VTubing, you basically become a 3D game. You become a game character. And the models that are oftentimes made with 3D VTubers and such are oftentimes made with software such as Blender, Vroid Studio, just to name a few of the more common ones. And what's really fun is that this format of VTubing is by all means, it's a freeing experience that I feel like every VTuber and every creator should be able to experience at least once. Now, overall, when you go into the world of 3D VTubing, you have to understand that 3D VTubing is, in my opinion, the middle ground of where most content creators get access to different types of models and even different types of items that allow them to get into the community right off the bat. For example, there are a lot of free ways for you to create your own VTuber model. It just requires you to have a lot of understanding and desire to learn how to use programs such as Vroid Studio and make things like in Warudo, which is one of the many 3D softwares that exist. And by understanding those types of programs, you can literally make an idea, become a 3D asset, and eventually bring it out into life. And what's really fun is that 3D models, even though you are, of course, using a 3D system, you only simply need to have a webcam that can track, and you can very easily incorporate hand tracking, facial recognition, and all sorts of different types of motion that allows your model and your creation to come to life. Now, one of the things I will say right off the rip, for anyone who is a hobbyist and looking into getting a 3D model, I believe 3D models are a more sensible, in my opinion, a more sensible approach to getting into VTubing, because there's a lot more space and there's a lot more places that you can obtain very fun and entertaining 3D models. What's really fun is that you can experiment with what models you want to use to eventually be able to put your creation into things like streams and even video games such as VR chat. And what's really nice is that the variety of the budget can depending on what route you take, especially if you choose to take pre-made 3D models or if you choose to get your own customized model. Now, for a degree of transparency and disclosure, my model costed around $500 to $600 USD. And I'm still personally learning how to work on all the other items because I'm still learning and new to the 3D space. But this has been one of the places that I love, adore even, the environment of 3D VTubing. Because as a person who wants to make VTubing and content creation my career, I've always wanted to have a way to be a character that I can represent myself as, but also a character that can be unique and have a fair degree of interactions, which is why I love 3D VTubing amongst all the other styles. Now, for anyone here who happens to be a career-minded creator looking into 3D, 3D by all means is a fantastic opportunity and has a lot of ways that you can incorporate 3D into your content. For example, many creators like to use 3D models to create things like live concert sessions, dance routines, such as very popular program known as MMD, otherwise known as Miku Miku dances, where you can literally use your 3D model that you made and have it be rigged, or you can make it yourself even, be rigged to various types of animations and skits where you can make your model do things that you normally couldn't do as a person, such as doing really epic dances, backflips, and other really funny things as well. Now, keep in mind that, of course, higher quality of anything, especially in the 3D model cases, can cost you from $1,000 to $5,000, of course, depending on who you choose to go to. But that is, of course, viewer discretion, and you can choose how to invest how you believe it will make your usage of money make the most sense for your type of content creation. And of course, complexity is always the biggest thing. Now, overall, throughout the entirety of this video, I want everyone who watches this whole situation to understand that whether you choose to be PNG, Live 2D, or even 3D, that there are always going to be pros and cons with every decision. And one of the biggest things I want to wrap up with 3D is that 3D has a lot of versatility, a lot of possibilities to use a large amount of setup equipment, but it doesn't need to be expensive. If you're willing to go into 3D, I highly recommend that you please research as best you can in terms of if you want to go into full body tracking, if you want to get high facial recognition, and so on. Because like I said, what you're seeing right now is as simple as a 3D model, a webcam, and a simple 3D software. Could I go harder and more intense? 100%. But at the end of the day, I am very satisfied with where I'm at currently with 3D. I do see myself eventually building up to it. But once again though, we'll be going to be wrapping up this segment of the video with a overall moderate segment of pros and cons for each of the major settings of PNG, Live 2D, and 3D. Because for everyone who's watching this video, the whole point of VTubing is for you all to find a fun way to express yourselves, a fun way to be involved in a community that is ever changing and growing with each and every new talent that shows up in the space. And we'll be starting off with today's pros and cons with the glorious things of PNG Vtubing. Firstly, automatically the pros of PNG Vtubing in my overall opinion. It is by far the cheapest option. It pretty much can be free in terms of how you choose to use it. If you choose to want to have a more customized variation, you can always look into commissions. But of course, overall, PNG allows anyone to walk right in, have a very amazing entry point for both hobbyists and career-focused individuals. And you can find yourself that overall, it just takes 1 to 2 images, a few moments in OBS or whatever streaming software you happen to use, and boom, you become a PNG tuber. And it requires next to no stress on your digital hardware necessities. And you can get into VTubing without needing any major investment. But of course, with every pro, there's a con. In the realms of PNG tubing, you will automatically see that it has a lot of limited visual engagement opportunities because many people are not willing to learn how to use animations, tracking, and toggles to make their PNG models actually feel alive and, you know, bigger and better than they could be. Most people tend to go the very simple 1 to 2 frames of open mouth, closed mouth, and that sometimes that's all you need. But from a career standpoint, you have to be very prepared that people are going to judge because of the lack of animation in comparison to other creators. However, there are other creators out there who use PNG models in a very fun way that allows them to feel almost like a live 2D model, but it allows them to become what is otherwise known as a GIF tuber. We now transition over to the realms of live 2D VTubing. Once again, the most industry standard, industry abundant form of VTubing. And we start off with the pros once again. Like I said, industry standard is by far the most recognizable, widely used, and it's the easiest style to integrate in regards to your content and your streams. It has a lot of smooth, natural animations. You can have a lot of really fun ways of tracking as long as your artists and rigging individuals do the job that they are paid to do, and you can have a really fun model to really integrate into your streams. With a lot of fun balances between customization and performances, you'll find that Live 2D is in a lot of ways, especially for those who are career focused, you'll find that Live 2D is the best way to go, as a lot of people are almost trained to enjoy and to seek out more Live 2D individuals. And another pro as well, the sheer plethora of artists and riggers and support tools allows for the ecosystem of resources to just be plentiful, and it's almost impossible to not find somebody who's willing to draw, animate, or create what you want to have as a creator. Now, of course, we go into the realms of the cons. Right at the rep, depending on how complex and how dynamic you want to have your model, it is very easy to say that Live 2D is by far the most expensive form of VTubing. Many people spending over 10 grand on a singular model, many people spending as little as $1,000 to $500 depending on how complex you want your model. It simply depends on your artist, your general complexity of your concept, and how and who you decide to contact. Various individuals and rig individuals, for example, will do the same job for less and sometimes provide the best quality. So one of the biggest things I can tell you guys in general is please do your research. Research is by far the most important thing with anything involving these formats of VTubing, and it's one of the biggest reasons why a lot of people feel they get scammed because they don't know who to talk to or how to talk to people. Now, obviously, we go right over to the cons. Like I said, price, annoying, but it also requires you to have a large skill gap. Skill gaps are one of the biggest situations that VTubing tends to stop a lot of people, is that the sheer requirement to make your own VTuber model in Live 2D is immense. The knowledge of layers, coloring, skeletal structures of rigging, and so on makes it an extremely difficult craft to learn, but if you are patient, it is a very profitable one. So again, research is a big key. And sometimes, a lot of times when you're using Live 2D models, you will find that sometimes your software, your hardware may get bogged down due to the requirements of things like VTube Studio in order to use your models. So make sure that you at least have some degree of updated equipment, or you're very good at solving those problems should they show up at any given time. Unfortunately, another con that may be a bit more opinionated, obviously, is that there is often a very high barrier of entry for hobbyists not looking to spend the money for their models, aka gatekeeping. A lot of people, when they look into the realms of Live 2D VTubers, is that a lot of people will demand that you look a certain way, or you have to have a certain visual aesthetic or a certain amount of animations to be considered a VTuber. And on top of that as well, many individuals will oftentimes compare and contrast your models to other very high-end VTubers, allowing your initial design to no longer be considered unique, also because you happen to share the same different types of ears, or God forbid, a color palette of a higher creator. So the biggest situation that goes into my next con is that your model does not guarantee success, and your originality of your concept is a huge essentialness. So again, research, concept board, and do everything that you can to figure out what is your next step in this process. And then finally, we end our realm within the spaces of 3D VTubing. One of the biggest pros of 3D VTubing, overall, extremely versatile, full body tracking, dancing, concerts. You can do almost anything with 3D VTubing. And if you know what you're doing, you'll find yourself to be in a very profitable spot, as you can have a lot of really fun types of content because of your 3D model. You have access to various types of entry-level tools like VRoid Studio, Warudo, and so on in order to interact with your 3D models, so be sure to check those things out. And of course, customization, animation, props, all those things make 3D VTubing a very fun and entertaining format to try, and in my opinion, it helps you stand out so much more than what it would be compared to a PNG and a Live 2D. But of course, the way that you stand out depends on you as the creator, so make sure you put some effort and make sure you put some gusto in what you're trying to create. And when we finally end off with the realms of the curves and the cons, the learning curve of 3D VTubing is by all means the most problematic situation, because 3D modeling, Blender, and knowing how to rig bones is a very difficult thing, such as Live 2D, but that requires a whole different type of mindset. But thank God for the internet. If you are wanting to do it, you can learn. So I wish you luck if you are choosing to go down that route. And of course, the biggest other con is that depending on how much you want to invest in 3D VTubing, you will find that motion capture / full body setups will require a fair amount of extra equipment. So be sure to keep in mind on how far you want to go in the realms of VTubing, especially for 3D. But it's not as widely used as Live 2D, so sometimes viewers might be confused as to how you look the way you look, because they may think that you're a Live 2D, but actually you are a 3D individual. So do the best you can to pick it out. But I hope this video found you guys well. This video was able to give you guys a way to feel a sense of understanding as to where you need to go next. If you guys want to see anything specific, I said my words right. If you want to see anything in the realms of specificness for the next video, consider letting me know down in the comment section what you would like us to dive into more. We'll consider making an additional video on that so you guys can learn more about it. But as always though, I have been your host, Nico Silverado. As always though, adios, sayonara, and goodbye.